Hello there. Hello, everybody. Welcome in and welcome back to the Galactic Archives. If you're new here, my name's Meshla. I'm a long-form fan fiction writer and world builder, and these workshops are a space where we slow down and talk about how stories work, not just structurally, but emotionally. And if you were here for the last couple of workshops, you might have picked up on that. We tend to focus on character driven craft, on writing that breathes, and on tension that doesn't rely on spectacle, and on stories that respect recovery, agency, and the quiet moments that often matter most. These workshop sessions are meant to be calm and low pressure. You don't have to speak in chat, you don't have to participate actively if you don't want to. Lurking is very welcome here. Sometimes just listening is enough to unlock something later. Tonight's workshop is part of our rotating series and it builds directly on last session's topic, writing recovery and reclaiming agency. Tonight, we're going to step sideways from that and look at what comes after the first breaths of recovery, because healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens under watchful eyes, in rooms that are too quiet, in bodies that are still braced for impact. And that's where quiet tension lives. This workshop isn't about action scenes. It's not about conflict in the traditional sense. It's about pressure, the kind that exists when nothing is actively happening, but everyone knows that something will. If you've ever written a chapter where your character is resting, but they're not really at peace, the world is calm, but not safe, the port characters are present, but watchful, and the environment itself feels like it's holding its breath, then you've already brushed up against this craft skill. Tonight, we're going to name it, break it down, and talk about how to use it intentionally. Give me just 1 second here. Gonna get some water. It's important to stay hydrated, my friends, especially when you're going to be doing a lot of talking like I am. Hopefully this is helpful to you, whether you're a professional writer, an aspiring writer, or a fan fiction writer who's been doing it for a really long time like me. I really do hope that these workshop sessions are useful for you. And I will be posting the VODs over on YouTube, and I will also have the notes and the script available in my Discord for anybody that would like them. I am definitely finding them useful for myself as well. And just a heads up, I will be posting some kind of quote-unquote homework at the end. You don't have to do it. It's there as exercises if you feel so inclined. Please don't feel pressure to do it if you're not up to that, but they're there to help you progress your writing if you so choose. Let me just find that. Goodness. Oh. I don't know where that is right now. Anyway. Oh, here we are. The first question we're going to look at is, what is quiet tension? Yes, that's the topic of our workshop. What does that mean? To me, quiet tension is the pressure that exists between events. It's the sense that the danger hasn't passed, it's just paused. The body remembers even when the mind wants to rest, and safety feels provisional. Stillness feels earned, but fragile. In Steps into the Past, chapters 12 and 13, they sit right in this space. Marin is no longer in immediate danger. She's home. She's surrounded by people who care deeply for her. And yet, her body is still flinching, her mind is still replaying, Jared is still watching her breathing, and Greer is still holding the perimeter like it's an active operation. Nagas itself feels like a shelter that knows it might not hold forever. Nothing explodes in these chapters, and yet the tension never leaves the page. That's not accidental. Let me give you a little context. Many writers struggle with quiet chapters. I definitely do. This is something that I'm continually working on, and one of the reasons why I like to add so many of these quiet chapters. Writers often worry that the readers will get bored. They worry that nothing is really happening, and they worry that they need to escalate. So they rush. They skip the stillness. They jump straight back into the next inciting incident. They treat recovery as downtime instead of actual story. But here's the truth. If you don't let your characters exist under pressure without release, then later conflict has nowhere to really land. Quiet tension deepens emotional realism, and it makes future danger feel earned. It allows readers to feel invested instead of overwhelmed, and it gives weight to small actions and choices. It's what turns a story from a sequence of events into a lived experience. And let me tell you, Marin's story is definitely a lived experience. What can this do for you as a writer? When you learn how to write with quiet tension, you can help yourself unlock the ability to hold a reader's attention without constant action. You can make stillness feel meaningful instead of empty. It can show trauma and recovery without exposition. It uses environment as emotional reinforcement. And it lets support characters carry the narrative weight without stealing the focus. And it builds suspense that feels inevitable, not forced. It may also help you gain confidence writing chapters where characters are resting. They might be doing simple things like eating, stretching, watching the sky, or even sitting by a fire or lying awake at night because they can't sleep. And you can stop apologizing for those scenes. Let me tell you, it was really, really hard for me to write some of those scenes initially, but they're not filler scenes. They're load-bearing. And it's important that these scenes exist alongside the heavier action scene. Before we move on into our case study, I'll leave you here with one quiet question. Have you ever written or wanted to write a scene where nothing happens, but everything feels heavy anyway? There's no need to answer in chat unless you want to. Just think about that for a moment. It felt very, very strange for me to write scenes like that initially, but I think that it's really important. One second here. Here we go. I'm making sure I'm following my notes here. Let's move on to our primary case study, which focuses on quiet tension in chapters 12 and 13. In this section, we're going to slow down and sit kind of inside chapters 12 and 13 of Steps into the Past. These chapters come after the immediate crisis has passed, but before the world has stabilized. That timing is really important. Quiet tension only works when something unresolved still exists, when the danger has shifted from immediate to anticipated. Nothing explodes in these chapters. There are no alarms. There are no enemies that breach the perimeter, and yet the chapters are dense with this pressure. Let's talk about how that's accomplished. Early recovery does not mean emotional safety. One of the first mistakes that writers, including myself, can make is assuming that once a character is safe, the tension automatically disappears. But safety and felt safety are not the same thing. In chapters 12 and 13, Marin is physically protected. She's surrounded by allies, she's in a familiar environment, and yet her body behaves as though the danger is still present. She moves carefully, she rests, but not deeply. She notices the changes in the air and she tracks sounds. This is a hallmark of this quiet tension. The body remains vigilant even when the situation says it shouldn't have to. You don't need to tell the reader that she's anxious. You can show it through restraint. This tension lives in how she chooses to sit, how she stands too slowly, how she avoids sudden movement, and how rest is present, but it's often incomplete or fleeting. This tension is intimate, it's inward facing, and it invites the reader to share the character's vigilance. Think about a moment when you were technically safe, but your body hadn't caught up yet. What did you notice first? A sound? Your posture? Your breathing? Or stillness? Or something else? Thinking about this quiet pressure in terms of how you personally have felt in a situation like this may help you put a scene like that in context. And next, let's look at Jared's watchfulness as silent pressure. Jared isn't anxious in a loud way. He doesn't hover near Marin, he doesn't interrogate her, but he watches. And the way that he watches creates tension, not because it's threatening to Marin, but because it protects her. Quiet tension often comes from care that hasn't relaxed yet. Jared notices her breathing. He tracks when she shifts. He remains nearby without demanding that she engage. He positions himself where he can see the exits. He doesn't say, "I'm watching you." He doesn't really need to. The tension comes from his restraint. As writers, this is really important. Support characters can carry tension without acting like they're suspicious or being aggressive. Jared's watchfulness in these chapters communicates the following thing. The danger isn't fully past. She's still in a vulnerable state, and someone is still on duty. This all reinforces the emotional atmosphere without adding to the plot. Quiet tension often works best when someone is still holding the line, even if the protagonist is trying to rest. That line holding becomes part of the background of the scene. In your own stories, who is still on watch after the danger has passed, and how do they show it without speaking? This happens a lot with a particular character, actually, which we're going to talk about. If Jared holds the tension close, Greer holds it wide. His presence isn't emotional, it's logistical. He's the person thinking about approach vectors, timing, coverage, silence, and what hasn't gone wrong yet. This matters because quiet tension doesn't live inside characters, it lives at the edges of the scene. Greer's perimeter tells the reader, this location is defended, but it's not peaceful. Safety is active, it's definitely not passive, and someone expects trouble even if no one says it out loud. You don't need scenes of combat to establish the stakes. You establish the stakes by showing that someone is still planning for them. This can give your chapter weight. It keeps the reader alert, gently but persistently. When writing quiet tension, it helps to put the danger just off stage, let preparation exist without a payoff, and show readiness without release. This creates the narrative pressure without escalating to full combat. Where do you think that the tension lives at the edges of your scenes that you're writing? Beyond the protagonist's immediate awareness? Something to think about. Oh, let me... I see you in chat, Wraith. Give me just a moment. Yes. It's important for your characters to have that downtime, even if they're not necessarily safe or relaxed. It gives them time to work through whatever has happened and to heal if they need to, or to process whatever it is that happened. Have any of you ever heard of a location as an emotional environment? That's what Tanagas often is. Tanagas 5 is the setting for a good portion of this particular story. But it's not necessarily neutral ground. Tanagas 5 is actually a planet that that was created when we started writing these stories, along with Catan, which is another created planet and culture. So I think they're kind of in the Outer Rim. I'd have to go look. um, but Tanagas isn't neutral ground. It shelters, yes, but it also listens. The forests are quiet in a way that feels intentional. The mountains loom rather than comfort, and the estate feels enclosed, not expansive. This is environmental quiet tension. The world itself isn't threatening, but it's watchful. Because environments can reinforce internal states without mirroring them. And August doesn't panic along with Marin. It doesn't soothe her either. It holds her. And holding in these particular chapters can be really heavy. Quiet tension can thrive in environments that feel old. They can also feel observant. They can feel restrained. They can feel capable of both shelter and concealment. You want to avoid overly cozy or overly hostile settings during early recovery. You want a place that protects, but that hasn't forgotten how to defend itself. Think about a setting that you've written that held its breath. What made it feel that way? The space, the light, the sound, or the scale of the location? Ooh. This is an interesting one that I have been kind of playing with. Sensory minimalism. Less is doing the work. One of the strongest techniques used in chapters 12 and 13 is sensory restraint. You don't get floods of description, you get selective detail. A sound, a shift in the light, a pause before movement. This is sensory minimalism or sensory restraint. This often works because it mirrors the protagonist's limited bandwidth. It keeps the reader focused. It prevents emotional overload, which can be a problem when writing. And it allows silence itself to carry meaning. When everything is described, nothing really stands out. When only a few things are described, each one of those becomes important. Quiet tension relies heavily on this discipline. Ask yourself these things. What does the character not notice yet? What details tend to break through anyway? And what sensory input feels unavoidable? These are your tension points. When you're overwhelmed, which sense usually cuts through first for you? Sound, light, or physical sensation? For me, it's usually physical sensation. We're going to linger here a little bit with our analysis. I want to stay with these chapters a little longer because this is where quiet tension either can succeed or collapse. Many writers understand in theory that stillness can carry pressure, but they struggle with the execution. So let's slow this down even further and look at how the tension is sustained moment by moment, not necessarily scene by scene. The first way that we can do this is through micro movements. One of the most consistent techniques that I used in chapters 12 and 13 is micro movement. These are not actions that directly advance the plot. They are actions that reveal constraint. Marin doesn't move freely yet. She moves deliberately. She adjusts. She pauses. She tests her balance. She chooses when to stop. This does two things simultaneously. It communicates recovery without excess exposition. It maintains tension by reminding the reader that ease has not returned. Quiet tension thrives on limited range of motion. When a character's movement is constrained physically, emotionally, or situationally, the reader feels that constraint as pressure. We have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes, my friends. When writing micro movement, ask yourselves these things. Is this movement optional, or is it necessary for the scene? Is it fluid, or is it measured? Does it resolve discomfort, or merely manage it? In chapters 12 and 13, movement rarely resolves discomfort, it just manages it. That distinction is crucial. In your current project, how freely can your character move, and what does that freedom or lack thereof communicate? Time can often feel different in quiet tension. Another subtle craft choice is time dilation. These two chapters don't rush. Moments often stretch. A few minutes of in-story time may occupy several paragraphs. A single action may take longer to complete on the page than it should. This isn't indulgence, it's psychological accuracy. After trauma, time can often feel slowed, sticky, uneven, or difficult to track. How many of you have been hurt or injured or sick in some way and have felt this? I definitely do. When I get really sick, I feel very sluggish, kind of sticky, like I can't really move. So that is a very real feeling. By allowing these moments to linger, the narrative mirrors Marin's internal experience. Quiet tension deepens on this alignment, and if you speed through these scenes, you break the immersion. Watch for things such as sentences that elongate action, pauses between dialogue, paragraph breaks that isolate moments. These are pacing tools, not stylistic flourishes. I am going to get some water. I encourage all of you to take a break and get some water or snack whenever the ad break hits, because that's precisely what they're for, in my opinion. Are there moments in your story where slowing time would increase this emotional pressure rather than stall momentum? Definitely something to think about that. We have an ad starting in about 2 minutes, so I am going to get... I'll see how far I can get before the ad break hits. Ooh. The refusal... Wow, refusal to reassure. Perhaps the most important and sometimes the most difficult choice in chapters 12 and 13 is the refusal to reassure the reader. The narrative does not say she was safe now, everything would be alright, or the danger has passed. Instead, it allows safety to remain conditional. Support exists, protection exists, but certainty does not. This is brave writing. Many authors feel compelled to comfort the reader after trauma scenes, but reassurance can often drain the tension. These chapters trust that the reader will sit with the unease. Ask yourselves these things as you work through these types of scenes. Am I reassuring because the story needs it, or because I do? What happens if I let safety remain provisional? This quiet tension can often depend on these unanswered questions. And here's a question for you. Where might you be reassuring the reader out of habit rather than necessity. I think that was happening a lot during the original versions of these stories. So I'm hoping that I'm working on that a little bit. it's a challenge. Thank you, Wraith. Oh. Thank you. And I'm wearing a nerdy shirt again. I will see you guys in about a minute and a half. Our ad is about to start. Please go get yourself some water or a snack. I will see you. Well, welcome back, my friends. I hope you took the opportunity to get a drink of water, or juice, or soda, or whatever it is that you feel so inclined to drink, or snack, or have a good stretch. Oh, hi, Shadow Legion. Welcome in. I am not actually writing right now. I am currently doing a workshop on different types of writing, actually. So welcome in. I hope you find this useful. We are currently working through a workshop called Quiet Tension, Pressure, and Stillness. What? Oh. I'm currently reading through Steps into the Past, and you can find it over on my AO3. That is book number 1, 2. Oh my goodness. I can't even keep track. Ah, we can find it. Let's see. There we go. That is the correct order. There you go. Sorry. I wish I could format it a little better. So this is, if we're going just by Marin's arc, this would be, which is A Daughter's Quest, this would be book number 6 of that arc. So, it's called Steps into the Past. So it's a bit near the bottom. There's a few that are still in progress. So if you would like to read that one, it is called Steps into the Past. And we are currently working through that as a case study actually tonight. Watchfulness as a shared state. Notice that watchfulness is not isolated to one character. Not necessarily. It's preferred, but not necessarily. Notice that watchfulness is not isolated to one character in these chapters. Marin is watchful, Jared is watchful, Greer is watchful, and the environment itself feels watchful. This creates a network of attention. No one in these chapters relaxes fully, and because of that, the reader doesn't really either. Quiet tension often strengthens when vigilance is distributed. No single character bears all the weight, and the responsibility is shared but unspoken. This is why these chapters feel held, not fragile as they often might. Is vigilance shared in your scenes, or is it concentrated in one character? What would change in your scenes that you're trying to write if it were shared among multiple people? No, you don't really have to read in order, but it is helpful. It helps give a little bit more context. Because the stories do kind of tag on to each other. Let me see if I can find you the link directly to that one. Of course, they're not in order. Oh, come on. Here we go. Keep in mind that the version that is currently up on AO3 is not the edited version, it is the original version. I am currently in the process of editing this story, even as I'm reading through it. So it's, you know, it's a thing. Here is the link to that one in particular. That is Steps into the Past. Before we talk about how to apply this skill in your own writing, it's important to see that quiet tension isn't isolated to just chapters 12 and 13. Those chapters are a pretty clean case study, but the technique itself recurs throughout Steps into the Past and across Marin's broader arc. I unfortunately can't publish it because it is Star Wars fanfiction. I would love to, but that gets into a whole bunch of legal stuff that I would rather not deal with, so it is going to remain a fanfiction. So I would absolutely love to, believe me, but I can't. Looking at secondary examples helps us to understand two things. This quiet tension is often scalable, and quiet tension can adapt to different emotional contexts. The shape changes, but the pressure remains. No, that would take a lot more work than I have time for. I would love to, but I don't have the time for that. Quiet tension before movement. No, it's fine. One place quiet tension appears repeatedly and steps into the past is before characters move into action. These are the moments where plans exist but they aren't fully executed. People are preparing without speaking. The air often feels too still, and everyone is waiting for some kind of signal. In later chapters, you see this before departures, veil shifts, strategic repositioning, and the handoff of responsibility. The key similarity to chapters 12 and 13 is this. The tension comes from anticipation, not necessarily a threat. No one is attacking yet, but everyone knows it's coming. That can create pressure without requiring an actual confrontation. Quiet tension before movement relies on the following things: controlled pacing, restrained or absent dialogue, purposeful stillness, and a sense of inevitability. It's the difference between something bad might happen and something is going to happen, just not yet. Hey, if you want to write a Star Wars fanfic, that is precisely why we're here. These workshops are hopefully going to be a tool for aspiring fanfiction writers, aspiring novel writers, or anyone within that sphere. I'm hoping that they will be useful and helpful as people work on their various stories. If you're writing a story, do you have scenes where characters are preparing to act, but the act itself hasn't actually happened yet? What emotions fill the gap? No, that's okay. You came in about halfway through. But I'll definitely make sure that the VOD is up over on YouTube, and it's always up on Twitch if you want to watch the rest of it later. So we have been talking about quiet tension in scenes that, you know, as a character is recovering, and how that shifts. Ooh. Quiet tension in group dynamics. Another recurring pattern is quiet tension between people who trust each other. This is often subtle, yet powerful. In Steps into the Past, you can often see this as unspoken understanding, quiet exchanged looks, shifts in proximity, and silence instead of verbal reassurance. This is especially visible in Ethan and Greer's coordination, Jared and Marin's shared quiet, and group scenes where everyone knows the stakes. There is no conflict between these characters, and yet the scene itself is tense. Why? Because they're all carrying the same unspoken weight. Quiet tension thrives with this shared awareness. Group quiet tension works when characters don't need to explain themselves. Dialogue is minimal, yet functional. Emotional labor is distributed, and no one breaks the stillness unnecessarily. If you want to, you can use that as a starting point for sure, but a lot of that would depend on the time period that you want to write in. I tend to write in, I guess you would call it post-legacy, if you're going by the non-Disney canon. So, if that's the time period that you would like to write in, yes, I would recommend reading that as a starting point. It would give you a lot of good background information. Have you ever written or even experienced for yourself a silence that felt shared instead of awkward? What made that silence feel connected for you? There's actually, I can think of a handful of instances on my end of things. I'm gonna take a drink of water. Please make sure that you guys are hydrating and stretching, and if you need a snack, get a snack. Those are important too. All right. Quiet tension after trauma and before meaning. Chapters 12 and 13 sit in a specific emotional window. They're after trauma, but they happen before it's really been interpreted or examined. Later in the arc, you'll see similar windows: after conflict, before reflection, after loss, before ceremony, after survival, before it's framed narratively. These are the moments where characters don't really know what this will mean yet. They haven't really sorted through their emotions, and identity hasn't been reshaped. Quiet tension lives here because uncertainty is unresolved. The story hasn't told the characters, or the reader, what comes next. When you're writing, here are some things to think about. Resist the urge to over-explain, to summarize, to resolve the situation, or interpret too early. Let the quiet tension exist in ambiguity. That's not confusion, it's preserving space. I mean, that could work. I tend to dabble in the other end of the spectrum as far as the timeline goes, so I know more about kind of that end of things. For those of you who are writing a story or thinking about writing a story, you might just have an outline or a draft. Is there a moment or a scene in your story where the meaning hasn't fully settled yet, and you could let it stay that way just a little longer? It could be any number of things. Yes, it can. And that's something that I have been really kind of working on with Marin's stories, especially this one, but this one and kind of the later two, because I don't want to give it all to the reader all at once, because that kind of, it breaks the immersion, if you will. Because it helps the reader kind of get into the character's head a little bit and kind of feel what they're feeling. Environmental tension across locations. We talked a little earlier about Tanagas as an environment that holds tension. This often repeats elsewhere in Steps into the Past. Ships that feel too clean, corridors that feel watched, rooms that feel deliberately empty even if they're not, forests that mute sound instead of amplifying it. Quiet tension environments share traits. They reduce noise instead of adding it. They feel old or intentional. They suggest memory. They limit movement or visibility. The environment doesn't threaten. It acts as a witness. And that witnessing can often create pressure. When designing environments for quiet tension, ask yourselves these things. What does this place remember? What might it hide? And what might it refuse to reveal? These answers can shape tone more than description or the density of your description. Ooh. And here's a question for you as a writer. Whether you've started writing your story or you're partway through, think about this. And maybe jot it down in your notes if you feel like it. No pressure to do that if not. If a location in your story could remember one thing, what would that one thing be? Ooh. Oh, I can think of a couple of great examples actually for a couple of Marin's earlier stories. Oh yeah. So, if a location in your story could remember one thing, What would that be? Quiet tension versus loud conflict. This is an important distinction. Quiet tension is not a lesser form of conflict, it's a different mode. Loud conflict escalates outward, it demands resolution, it moves quickly, and is often exhausting. Quiet tension presses inward, delays the resolution, it often moves slowly, and it sustains. Both of these things are necessary in a story, but without quiet tension, this loud conflict often has no foundation to stand on. Chapters 12 and 13 do the structural work that allow later events in the story to land with weight. Ooh. Where in your story does tension come from restraint rather than confrontation? Ooh, that is a great question. Definitely something to think about, whether you're in the beginning stages of drafting an outline or you're actually working through scenes and chapters. I'm gonna take a little bit of water here. We're going to applying these things that we've talked about a little bit. Writing quiet tension on purpose. Up to this point, we've talked about what quiet tension looks like and where it may appear. This section deals with intentional use. Quiet tension often works best when it's not accidental, when you choose it because it serves the emotional and structural needs of the story, or, in some cases, the particular chapter. This is the difference between nothing happens in this chapter and everything is going to happen, but not yet. You want to start with pressure, not plot. When writing quiet tension, don't ask yourself, what happens in this scene? Ask instead, what pressures exist in this scene? Pressures can come from things like unresolved danger, emotional aftermath, unspoken knowledge, the anticipation of something happening, withholding information, or protection that hasn't stood down. Greer is a perfect example of the last one. Oh my goodness. Looking at you, Master Sergeant Greer. Oh boy. In chapters 12 and 13, the pressure is clear. Marin has survived, but she's not fully processed what has happened. The threat is dormant, but it's not gone. The people around her are still on duty. Nothing needs to occur for this tension to actually exist. Here's a technique. Before writing a quiet scene, write just one sentence for yourself. This scene holds pressure because... If you can't finish that sentence, the scene may need either clearer emotional stakes, a stronger unresolved element, or permission to be shorter. If you had to describe the pressure in your current scene in one sentence, what would that be? Something to think about. A lot of what's going on in chapters 12 and 13 is they know that things are going to happen, but they don't know when or exactly what. So... Use physical restraint as a narrative signal. Quiet tension often shows up in what the characters don't do. They often don't pace, they don't argue, they don't collapse dramatically, they don't demand answers, and they don't make big gestures. Instead, they'll often move carefully, limit their own motion, to stillness, and conserve their energy. These are all things that I do when I'm sick or injured of, in some way or another. So it's definitely relatable. This restraint signals to the reader that something is being contained. Emotional energy is banked, not spent. In chapters 12 and 13, Marin's restraint is pretty much everywhere. It's in how she sits, how she stands when she does, how she breathes, and in how she rests without actually fully sleeping. Restraint is not absence, it's control under strain. We have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes, my friend. That ad is 1.5 minutes. Once it gets here, it's a great time to go get a drink of water, grab a snack, grab your meds if you have those, things like that. When revising a quiet scene, remove one unnecessary movement, try removing one line of dialogue, try removing one emotional explanation, then see if the scene feels more tense, not less. Often, it will. And here's something for you guys to think about. Is there a moment in your writing where removing a reaction might actually make the scene stronger? That definitely has seemed to be the case with chapters 12 and 13. Well, and pretty much all of Steps into the Past. I've been doing a lot of work over these chapters. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I'm trying to rework them, because I want to give them a lot more depth and detail. And sometimes less is more. The chapters themselves might be long, but individual scenes often have less dialogue. And I think that that really helps. Let support characters carry the weight. One of the most effective ways to sustain the quiet tension is to offload the vigilance onto your support characters. This allows your protagonist to rest, observe, and exist in a liminal space, while someone else watches the exits, monitors timing, holds the perimeter, and stays alert. In Steps into the Past, Jared holds the emotional watch, and Greer holds the tactical one. Neither of them needs to explain why they're doing this. Their presence alone communicates, "We're not finished yet." Ask yourself when writing these scenes, who is still working while the protagonist rests? Who hasn't relaxed yet? That would be Greer. Who is carrying responsibility quietly without talking about it? That would definitely be Jared. Give that character a position, a posture, and a repeated action. That repetition can often become tension in the scene. Who in your story or chapter is still on duty even when things look calm? Definitely something to think about. It's always Greer for me. Always Greer. Probably Ethan. I mean, no. No, he does not. He really does not. He might look like he's just casually lounging, but like I know and Marin knows that that is not true. He does not know the meaning of relaxing. Not really. He's been a Marine and a Veil operative for far too long to fully relax. It is definitely something that is not really in his vocabulary. No, yeah, definitely not. Greer more so, but yeah, also Ethan. But Ethan is more of the... Ethan falls more into like the protector role rather than like the military one. He kind of took over being Marin's guardian when her father was killed. So it's a different kind of relationship. And if you read those chapters in particular, you will actually see that relationship dynamic a lot. You'll see it kind of play out in the scenes. It's actually really interesting because you'll notice like the nuances between the two. Which I find absolutely fascinating. There we go. Oh, all right. We have an ad starting in about 20 seconds, my friends. Please take the ad break, which is a minute and a half, to go get yourselves a drink of water or a snack, or take a good stretch. All of these things are important. I don't do them enough either. My mods are always yelling at me. That's why the channel point redeems exist. Go get a drink. Alright, I think we are back from our ad. Please tell me if that's not the case. I saw the banner at the top of the chat go away, so I think it's gone. Welcome back, my friends. I do hope you actually took my advice to went and got a drink of water. That is super important because I know that I don't drink enough water, and if I don't, you guys probably don't either. So please take care of yourselves. My mods are always yelling at me about that. There's all kinds of fun little commands if you want to play with that and tell me to drink water, get a snack. That's why they're there. For me to take care of myself and to remind you guys to do the same. Hey, that works too. Trust sensory minimalism. Quiet tension doesn't require rich description everywhere. It instead requires precision. In early recovery scenes especially, characters have a limited bandwidth, their attention often narrows, and their senses may filter rather aggressively. Choose one sound, one physical sensation, or one visual anchor. Let those repeat or subtly shift. In chapters 12 and 13, sensory detail works because it is selective, restrained, and grounded in the physical body. The reader can feel what the character can handle. Try this exercise. Write a scene using only 3 senses. Exclude one sense entirely. This could often be smell or sound, but you could try taste or sight or hearing. The omission itself creates tension in the scene. Ooh. Which sense does your character trust least right now? And which one cuts through anyway? For Marin, that would be... well, not really a sense, but... She probably doesn't trust the sound because people are being very quiet. That's a hard one to pin down for her. Ooh. Let the environment reinforce and not compete. In quiet tension scenes, the environment should reinforce the emotional state, not distract from it. Avoid overly cozy spaces, overly dramatic weather, or symbolic overload. Instead, aim for environments that feel old, feel observant, and feel capable of shelter and/or secrecy. Nagus works because it doesn't resolve Marin's tension, it contains it. That containment keeps the pressure intact. When you're constructing a setting for your scene or even your chapter, ask yourselves these things. What does this place allow? What does it prevent? And what does it quietly enforce? These answers can help guide your description of the space. Does your current setting help your character contain pressure or release it? Oh, yeah, that's a question to think about. I'm going to repeat that question again. Does your current setting help your character contain the pressure that they're feeling or release it? Something to think about. Common pitfalls to watch for when writing this type of scene. Quiet tension often breaks when scenes over-explain an emotional state. Dialogue fills the silence unnecessarily. Environments soothe too completely. And characters relax too quickly, and tension is resolved without consequence. You can see this very clearly in chapters 12 and 13. There's very little actual dialogue unless Marin isn't in the room. Oh. Thank you, Rach. Got there ahead of me. If your quiet scene feels a little flat, ask yourselves these questions. Did the character answer questions too soon? Did I let anyone fully stand down? Did I rush to reassurance? Quiet tension requires patience from the writer as much as the reader. Where might you be resolving tension too early out of habit? And this is true for me as well when I was first writing. It's a really common habit for a writer to try and resolve whatever issue is going on really quickly. So try to be objective about your scene and think where you might be resolving the tension too early. Ooh. Adapting quiet tension across genres. This skill is, well, this skill is not specific to a genre. You might call it genre agnostic. This quiet tension can work in science fiction, fantasy, romance, literary fiction, horror, slice of life, or even political thrillers. The form changes, the pressure remains. Examples in romance could be unresolved desire. In horror, it could be an unseen threat. In fantasy, it could be dormant magic. In sci-fi, it could be systems on standby, or something that hasn't happened yet that the characters know is coming anyway. In literary fiction, it could be emotional reckoning. The key is always the same. Something matters and it hasn't been addressed yet. What might quiet tension look like in the genre that you love the most? Some people really like reading horror stories or watching horror movies. Some people like romances. It's different for everybody. I like science fiction personally. I grew up reading Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern and David Weber's Honor Harrington series. If you don't know about either author or their series, please look them up. They're very cool. Yes, the Dragon Riders of Pern series is fabulous. I literally grew up reading those as a teenager, and they are absolutely fantastic. And just, can I summarize that? Essentially, it's this society that exists on a planet where they breed and train dragons to fight thread, which is, it's a substance that falls from the star that their planet orbits around, and the dragons have to burn it from the sky so it doesn't like kill their crops and things like that. And they have to live inside caves. They're called holds, so that they don't get, killed by thread. So, that is my quick and dirty explanation of the Dragon Riders of Pern series. It's actually really fascinating because it deals with like, yeah, you might have to go on Amazon for that. But it may also be harder to find the books in print because Anne McCaffrey passed away a few years ago, but you can also check your local library. There might be a book swap in your community, things like that. But definitely check your local library if you can get there, or a local book swap, or a used bookstore. You can find them in all kinds of places. Now we're going to look at some extended techniques for quiet tension. We're still talking about applying this skill, and this focuses on revision, reader trust, and sustained stillness. Most writers don't struggle to draft the quiet scenes. They struggle to trust them. They often worry that the scene might be too slow, feel too empty, too subtle, or that it's not doing enough. So this extension is about what happens after that first draft, when the doubt starts to creep in and the quiet tension is what's often broken during your revision. Silence versus emptiness, and learning the difference. One of the hardest distinctions to learn is the difference between silence that holds pressure and the emptiness that drains it. Silence often has unresolved stakes, awareness, containment, and an expectation. Emptiness has no pressure, no anticipation, often no consequences, and really no weight. Chapters 12 and 13 definitely aren't empty. Even when little is happening, something is still at stake. Marin's sense of safety, the group's overall readiness, the unspoken future, and the possibility of reoccurrence. This is why stillness works. When revising a quiet scene, ask yourselves, what would break if this moment were interrupted? What might still be unresolved here? And who's still bracing? If you can answer those questions, the scene isn't empty. Is there something in your quiet scene that you may be working on that would be disrupted if the stillness were broken? If so, what is it? Ooh. This is important, especially as an aspiring writer like me, or anyone who's starting to write their first story. Managing reader anxiety without giving into it. Readers can bring anxiety into quiet scenes, especially in genres where action is expected. As writers, we can feel that anxiety and often respond by adding extra dialogue, explaining the emotions of the scene, and resolving tension too early, inserting unnecessary reassurance. This is understandable. It's also where quiet tension is most often lost. Chapters 12 and 13 do a pretty good job of resisting this impulse. They trust the reader to stay. Instead of asking, will the reader get bored? Ask yourselves, what does the reader know that the character doesn't? Or, what does the character sense but they can't yet name? That asymmetry creates reader engagement. Where might you be trying to soothe reader anxiety instead of letting the tension do its work? Okay. Editing for quiet tension. What to cut, not to add. Quiet tension is rarely strengthened by adding material. It's actually strengthened by removing things. During your revisions, look for emotional explanations, restated stakes, repeated reassurance, and dialogue that resolves too much too soon. Cutting these often increases your tension. Try this. Highlight all of the sentences that explain how the character feels, pick 1/3 of them to remove, and see if the remaining physical cues do more work. In many cases, they often will. What explanation in your scene could be replaced with a physical or environmental cue? It could be a change in the wind, it could be a scent, it could be something that the character is feeling. Just things to think about. Thank you, Wraith. I appreciate you. See, taking care of me. Thank you, sir. Sustaining quiet tension across multiple scenes. Quiet tension becomes powerful when it persists. In Steps into the Past, chapters 12 and 13 don't resolve the tension. They carry it forward. This is done through repeated watchfulness, consistent restraint, unresolved anticipation, and characters who do not stand down. The Sniper, sir, thank you for that 3-stream watch streak. And Wraith, I saw that you were on a 7 watch streak earlier. Thank you. I appreciate you. The reader learns. We are not done yet. To sustain quiet tension across scenes, by repeating a posture, a duty, a withheld answer, or an environmental cue, each repetition should shift slightly. That shift signals progression without actually releasing the tension. That I can definitely think of something that Marin does continuously. Is there a detail that you could let recur quietly across 2 or 3 scenes to carry pressure forward? It could be as simple as maybe your character has an object that they touch consistently. For Marin, it's her father's tags. It's like a stress habit. Ooh. Quiet tension as structural support. Quiet tension isn't just emotional, it's structural. It bridges recovery and action. It allows characters to change gradually. It prepares the reader for the eventual escalation that we all know is coming. And it makes later conflict feel earned. If you remove quiet tension from a story, everything can often become louder and flatter. Chapters 12 and 13 do essential structural work so that the later chapters can escalate without feeling abrupt or gratuitous. Think of quiet tension like this: the load-bearing silence between 2 storms. It doesn't shout, but without it, the structure fails. Where in your story is quiet tension doing structural work you might not have named or figured out yet? Okay. When to release the quiet tension? Because quiet tension shouldn't last forever. It should be released when a decision is made, movement begins, a truth is spoken, action is taken, or the environment changes. Release can feel powerful because the pressure was held. Chapters 12 and 13 do not release this tension, they hand it off to the next phase of the story. Do you know what moment will eventually release the pressure you're building in your story? Even if it hasn't arrived. Definitely something to think about. Hey Lord, welcome in. You came in just in time. I am about to end for the evening. Good to see you. As we draw to the close of tonight's workshop, I want to leave you with a reframing. Quiet scenes are not pauses in the story, they're where the story listens to itself. In chapters 12 and 13, nothing explodes, no one confronts the enemy, no great revelation reshapes the plot. And yet everything that follows depends on what happens here, because this is where the body remembers, vigilance hasn't eased, trust is tested quietly, support characters reveal who they actually are, and the environments show what they're capable of holding. Hey, I have to work in the morning. Quiet tension is the pressure that makes later movement meaningful. If you remove it, your story may move faster, but it will land softer. And if you learn to trust it, you'll find that stillness can be gripping, restraint can be powerful, and silence can speak. And the waiting can often carry weight. You don't have to justify the scenes, you don't have to rush them, and you don't have to make them loud to make them matter. Is there a quiet moment in your story that you might allow to breathe longer? Not to add content, but to deepen the pressure that we've been discussing tonight. I hope that this workshop was helpful for you guys. I'm actually learning a lot by working through these as well. And if you guys are interested, here's some light homework for those of you who are writers. These are entirely optional. They're meant to be small, reflective, and low effort. Take one if it serves you, or don't, and leave the rest. We have an ad starting in just under 5 minutes. The pressure sentence. Write one sentence about a quiet scene you're working on. This scene holds tension because... That's it. If a sentence feels clear, the scene likely will too. One detail repeated. Choose a quiet moment and pick one sensory detail. A sound, a physical sensation, or a shift in light. Let it appear twice in the scene, slightly changed. Notice how this repetition builds pressure without escalation. 3. Who's still on watch? Answer this in your head or on paper. Who is still holding the line in this moment, and why? You don't need to add a new scene. Sometimes the answer reshapes an existing one. The thing not said. Oof, sorry. Look at a quiet exchange between two characters. Ask yourself, what are they not saying? Why is it now? Who benefits from that silence? You don't need to fix it. Just notice it. And 5. Letting a scene end early. Pick a quiet scene and end it one paragraph sooner than you might. Stop it before the reassurance, and before the explanation. See what remains in that silence. Which of these feels easiest to try? Not tonight. There's no rush, that's for sure. But someday soon. Hey Parmesan, welcome in! Oh, I am just getting ready to head out for the evening. I'm so sorry, but it's good to see you. Thank you for spending this time here with me tonight. Whether you were here in chat and you typed or you simply listened, you were here. You were part of the room. Quiet tension isn't about withholding anything. It's really about trust. Trusting your reader, trusting your characters, and trusting the weight of what hasn't been resolved yet. Next time we'll build on this in a different direction. But for tonight, it's enough to let the stillness stand. Rest well. Kesarim. For those who don't know, Kesarim is a Atashir word meaning rest easy or stand down, that kind of thing. Atashir is a language that I've been building as I rework these stories. It's a constructed language, or a conlang, that's kind of built around the culture and the people that have also been built for these stories. As always, thank you for everybody who was here this evening, even if you wandered in and lurked. That is perfectly okay. And I hope that these writing workshops are useful to you. If you would like to rewatch this one or any of the other ones, I think there are 2 previous ones. They can be found here on my Twitch for a little while, and I'm also on YouTube. I mean, obviously. Alright. And some people are just weird. Let me see. We have about 1 minute and 7 seconds until our ad break starts. I'm going to see if there's someone that we can raid. Nope. Thank you for snoozing that ad break. I appreciate you. Thank you. We only have so many of those, so choose them wisely. But yes, like I said, I do hope that these workshops are useful to those of you who are working on fan fiction, or if you're a writer of a novel, or just wanting to learn a little bit more about the writing process. I am by no means an expert. I am just sharing my knowledge and my experience through the lens of the stories that I've written, actually. So, like I said, if you'd like to read the stories, you can do that over on my AO3. If you'd like to rewatch the VODs, they are also over on my YouTube. And they'll be here for, I don't know, a month or something over on Twitch. But I always put them over on YouTube so that they can always be found. I am going to go find someone to raid. Give me 1 second while I look for people. Oh, of course not. Oh, actually, that's adjacent to what we were doing, kind of. Yeah, I'm not finding anybody in particular that sparks my interest at the moment. So if you can toss me their name, that would be great. Oh, okay. I will snag that. All right, let me get that going over here. Thank you, Lord. I appreciate you. For anybody who is subscribed to the channel, you can grab that first raid message. And if you are following or otherwise lurking, you can grab the second one. I would greatly appreciate if you guys would tag along and share the nerdy love with Mademoiselle. Hey, that's awesome too. And I hope that you guys have an awesome rest of your day and evening. And I hope that you have a great start to your week. Wait 1 second. Becoming Okay. And I will be back on Wednesday, and I will be reading chapters 12 and 13 of Steps into the Past. Have an awesome evening, you guys, and take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all on Wednesday for some story time. Have a good night.